One of the things that I am known for talking about is eugenics and global African population control. It is something that the European thinkers of the world and corporate giants of the world have been working on for a very long time. This was just a test run to see how well we could carry it out, how ignorant we could keep the people, and to see how the people, this was a psychological experiment to see how humanity would respond to something like this, because they've never done it on this scale before. And it was done with the intent. First of all, let's look at the facts. Black women in Africa have the oldest life expectancy. According to the United Nations, the elderly, those above the age of 70, will be disproportionately located in Africa. The elderly across the world is also growing. People are living longer. Although that's good from a health standpoint and a family standpoint, that is horrible from a capitalist standpoint. See, under capitalism, everybody is a slave. And you must be able to do two things as a slave. You must be able to work. We must be able to exploit your labor, or you must be able to purchase. We must be able to exploit your dollar. If we cannot exploit your labor or exploit your dollar, you're almost useless to the capitalist empire. Let's look at elders. Elders are a problem. You know why? Because they don't buy, because they don't need much, and they don't work because they're retired. And elders tend to also be what? A responsibility on society, because now society has to take care of them, which is fine because they took care of society. But in capitalism, which is based on pure exploitation, people who can't work and people who cannot buy regularly in large amounts would be better off dead. We better also pay attention to the East Indians, because the East Indians right now in Trinidad and Tobago, and I want to send a shout out to the brothers and sisters from the island of Trinidad and Tobago who just celebrated their independence yesterday. The East Indians now outnumber the Africans on the Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago. They are the majority now. In South Africa, I'm looking at how the East Indians are moving in, and I'm looking at how the South African government is not putting any checks and balances on the East Indians for getting in. And so not only do you have to worry about the Chinese, you have to worry about the East Indian, and they pose a special threat that the Europeans did not pose. See, the Europeans are a global minority. The Chinese and the East Indians are second only to the African in terms of global population. We are number one. But after us are the Chinese and the East Indians at a close number two. So whereas the European could not dominate Africa numerically, the Chinese and the East Indians could give us a strong run for our money on the African continent. And they're buying up too much land, and they're taking over too much wealth. So we have a three-headed dragon that must be slain. It is a three-headed dragon. It is the European imperialist, it is the Chinese imperialist, and it is the East Indian imperialist. The main port of Jamaica, which I believe is the port of Kingston, has been sold or leased to the Chinese. They own the port. And let me tell you why that's dangerous. Not just economically, militaristically, that's dangerous. Because let me tell you what I learned when I was in Trinidad and Tobago. When I was in Trinidad and Tobago, they told me that the East Indians control the drug trade and the gun trade. And they said the way they were able to take over the drugs and the guns is because they also dominate the used car trade. So when the East Indians would bring the used cars in, when they would import the used cars, they would put the guns and the drugs in the cars. And that's how they were able to sneak the guns and drugs in. So with the Chinese owning the port, and we do know that China has always been involved in the drug trade, the opium trade, and other trade. So what I also see happening is that the Chinese are going to start importing dope, cheap dope, that they're going to put into the community, which is going to hook a lot of our brothers and sisters on drugs. They're also going to start bringing guns in and selling them. They're going to do exactly what the European did over 100 years ago. They're going to foment and incite and instigate violence and drug use because they're going to bring the guns and the drugs in. You don't let another people control your ports, because whoever controls your ports controls whatever comes in and out of your country. I'm telling you, the drug problem that you see now and the gun problem that you see now, it is about to be mushroomed if African leaders don't act soon, because the Chinese are not there just to control the port. They're there to take over the island. Let us be clear. There's 4 reasons why the Chinese are pushing into the Caribbean and pushing into Africa. Number 1, China is overpopulated. I've been there twice. China is overpopulated. So they're looking for places where they can dump their excess population. Africa and the Caribbean are perfect because there's so much undeveloped land. So the way China sees it, we can put our people, like you said, out in the village, put them in the middle of nowhere, and let them build brand new cities and towns in the undeveloped sections of African countries and Caribbean countries. That's number 1. Population removal, okay? Number 2, China is the Walmart of the planet. China is the Walmart. It produces everything, and it is the number 1 producer of what? Cheap goods, cheap food, cheap clothes, cheap housing needs. So you're looking for places where you can sell all of this cheap stuff that nobody wants to buy. What better place to do that than Africa? You understand, where many of our brothers and sisters have to exist on a very meager daily wage. Thirdly, you want a place where you can expand your empire, your capitalistic economic empire. Even though China is communist, they practice capitalism. Ironic. But where can you put factories? Where can you put factories and employ people for cheaper wages than what you pay the Chinese? Africa and the Caribbean. We're going to open up factories all over Africa to make more of our cheap junk. We'll be able to sell our cheap junk right there where we make it. Think about this now. Think about this. They don't even have to ship it. They won't even have to ship their cheap merchandise from China. They can make it in Africa and they can sell it in Africa, and they will use that money to do what? Build and take over African communities and resources. Now, Black Lives Matter is an organization that was founded during the Michael Brown police genocide protests in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. And it was founded by a group of lesbian sisters. And if you read their website, they tell you that the true focus of that organization is not Black liberation. It is to promote the LGBTQ lifestyle and to make sure that the Black LGBT agenda is accepted. They are funded by George Soros, who is a population control junkie. Why would a Black organization be funded by a white person whose agenda is to control Black life? If Black lives matter, why are you funded by somebody who's trying to control Black life? So that doesn't make any sense. Their funding source is a contradiction of the name that they claim to represent. Now, from my perspective, in order to be a genuinely Black liberation movement, 2 things must be fulfilled. 2 criteria. Number 1, your money must be all Black. And number 2, your members must be all Black. For me, that's Garvey, that's Pan-Africanism. They don't fulfill either one. They are multicultural, and their funding is multicultural. No different than the NAACP, the Urban League, organizations in the UK, organizations in Africa, that doesn't mean that some of these organizations can't do some good things, because they have. I know some good young people in the Black Lives Matter movement. I know good people in the NAACP, but the organization itself, the structure, the leadership, the mission has not, cannot, will not deliver liberation for African people, because whoever pays you rules you. This is an African proverb. You know it. The hand that pays is the hand that rules. And Black Lives Matter is funded by entities and organizations that have no interest in the liberation of Black people. So they are a contradiction. Again, I respect the brothers and sisters in the organization. Some of them mean well at the bottom on the grassroots side, but on the structural side and the leadership side and the vision, that organization is no saving grace for Black people. I believe it was created for three reasons. I believe Black Lives Matter was created and funded, number one, to replace traditional masculine Black male leadership. Get rid of all alpha male Black leaders. Replace them with LGBTQ-oriented radical Black feminist lesbians. It is a way to destroy the image and presence of traditional Black male leadership. Now, they do have Black male leaders on the local level, but if you look at their national leadership, it is largely dominated by LGBT radical Black feminist lesbians. And that is why Kamala Harris was partly chosen to be Biden's vice president. Now, she's not a lesbian, but she is a multiculturalist and a radical Black feminist. Okay. And as such, she can help promote that energy within the Black community. See, the three new faces of white supremacy are multiculturalism, feminism, and LGBTism. I'm going to say it again. So Africa has a three-headed monster: European imperialism, Chinese imperialism, East Indian imperialism. That's Africa's three-headed monster. Black America's three-headed monster is LGBTism, radical Black feminism, and multiculturalism. Those are the new faces of racism.